Hello everyone, this is Yours Trivia. Welcome back to our subscriber game tournament season 2 as we continue with the group 5 matchup between Densetsu 7 in the green versus Valiant Vanguard in the red. And looking at their draft, we have Densetsu 7 bringing Valiant, Lu Zhi, and Sun Jian. In terms of unit choices, the Defender of Empire, 6 of them, Unbreakable Spear Guard with better armor at a pretty reasonable cost on Lu Zhi, is definitely a great choice. But the other units I feel are slightly poor decisions because we have 3 Militia Shot Cav added on a champion, and then the 1 polearm unit added in is a Heavy Spear Guard, which is basically a spear guard that costs way more with a better shield that protects you from more range attack, which essentially doesn't happen in multiplayer. And then for Sun Jian's case, we have 5 of the Mercenary Cavalry. These are very expensive cavalry with decent charge, but very, very low morale. I believe their morale is actually lower than militia units, and they cost way more. So in essence, we're paying for 8 low-end cavalry and actually spending a good deal of money on these 8 units because of the 5 Mercenary Cavalry. And if we had just invested this income in maybe 3 or 4 premium cavalry, maybe even the Jade unit, that could maybe help us out a bit more. We have seen some premium cavalries do a lot of damage in previous matchups. In this case, we have a lot of low-end cavalry, which works if you have good morale damage comp, as they are fast and they can do chase downs. In this case, the only morale ability that's on the team is Sun Jian's Roar, and that's not a very good morale ability. Lastly, Valiant is probably better served picking things like Protector of Heaven, slightly more premium infantry, as even though the Defender of Empires are solid choices against cavalry and they're unbreakable, they are terrible in melee because they have the combat capabilities of just the Spear Guard with extra armor. And that goes the same for the Heavy Spear Guard. So in essence, I think Densetsu 7's composition lacks damage across the board, and it's a bit fragile, even defensively speaking. The general choices are decently strong. I believe Lu Zhi will offer Stifling Deluge to protect the other generals. Sun Jian has Flame of the Phoenix, which is a very good anti-infantry ability, and Valiant has Reckless Strike, which is actually a very good counter-general ability. So we'll see how that plays out. Then for Valiant Vanguard, we're bringing Huang Fusong, Zheng Jiang, and Lu Bu. So the generals are once again very strong. There is no strategist on this side, so technically the combined strength of these 3 generals are going to be stronger for the red side. And we have Huang Fusong with the Hail of Arrow ability. We have Zheng Jiang with the Poison Dagger. Lu Bu obviously bringing his Gaze and Slam, adding to damages on the general side. In terms of units, we have 2 of the Imperial Sword Guard, very premium quality infantry, high damage, high defensive stats, have access to formations, and because there's a pair of them, they have Imperial Solidarity, giving them farther defensive buffs. Very powerful units. Then we have, once again, Heavy Spear Guards for Zheng Jiang, which I think is an interesting choice. Once again, I probably will pull that money for more premium choices. Just because Heavy Spear Guard is a quality frontline unit in campaign, its sole purpose is soak up enemy range damage and prevent enemy cavalry from charging. If you get them into melee, they actually die quite easily. They're not a great frontline unit. Then we have Lu Bu with 2 flying riders and 2 Xiliang Cav and 1 Peasant Raider. Interesting assortment of cavalry. I think going with just pure Xiliang Cavalry is probably better just because the cost is pretty cheap compared to Flying Riders for pretty much the same unit, but nothing really wrong here. These are sort of middle tier units that doesn't sacrifice too much speed for their damage and are decent choices overall. So as we jump into this matchup, I think the key point is going to be how to kill those Imperial Sword Guards, as Sun Jian's ability is probably the only thing on Densetsu's side that could kill those units, or else I think those 2 alone can probably kill off all 7 infantry on the green side. So let's hop into battle and see how this one actually plays out. And taking a look at the deployment, we have a pretty spread out deployment by Densetsu 7 on his own side. So he spread his forces to infantry cluster here with 2 of his generals. He's trying to hide Wei Yan a bit more aggressively. I think they are in the forest with the cavalry. So they're hiding to the right flank. We have a couple more cavalry hiding on the left flank. And then we have 2 in the rear. The only thing that's slightly concerning about this is... there's also some weird formation going on right here as well. They're not in formation, they're just spread a little differently. Perhaps worried about a potential poison volley situation. It's better safe than sorry. But spreading units out like this, thinking that, you know, element of surprise, there's really no element of surprise unless you somehow pull the enemy general closer and you spring the cavalry on them, which is going to be a rare case. But at least the good news is his main army doesn't need much protection. There's no vulnerable unit in this group. Or you can say they're all sort of vulnerable depending on what they're fighting. Then looking at the red side, Valiant Vanguard's keeping his forces together. He has fewer units because he's gone with more premium choices, and he pretty much have them all lined up. And we'll see how this one plays out. Yeah, because of the general advantages here, I think it's better they travel together just to escort Huangfuzong into a good position to do Hail of Arrows. Although the only issue is the turtle formation of all these units will negate any damage from Hail of Arrows. So it's better served to try to shoot a general, maybe try to poison dagger Lu Zhi from far away, as Siphoning Deluge can only cover so far. Yeah, the spread out deployment pretty much forces you to gather together once again. My opinion on spreading out your units for deployment, unless you're trying to pull off a Yan Bai Hu, where he needs to get closer to the enemy and he has the safety of stock, there's really no benefit of spreading out your units. You're letting the enemy pick a fight where you have a smaller force, in essence. You should always just set your army up together and just respond to what the enemy is doing. In this case, they're still just pulling together into position. Either side have range. The only technical range option are the generals, which I guess we can zoom in now in case they start throwing daggers. But in essence, the best outcome you could get with like a sudden deployment into the forest is maybe the enemy also deploy something there and you catch them off guard at the first moment. Well, that is so close to friendly fire. Oh, what did I say? And all trying to hit one unit. People lost 2k there. You gotta be careful how you place your generals when you're asking them to shoot Hail of Arrows like that. Okay, we're getting the charge bonus ability, Impetuous Charge from Sun Jian, which adds quite a bit of speed, mass, and charge bonus. So these slightly slower units or generals are not getting out. They don't have slam ability, so cavalry is going to do great against them. And we'll see if there's any dismount going on to try to kill them quicker. Lu Bu is coming back to help. Lu Bu is the one with the smash, so he needs to be here to clear out these cavalry, which are just, you know, mounted lancer militias, very weak units. What is Wei Yan doing? That was a weird choice to just pull him when he's the general killer with the reckless strike. Like, dismounting him would have done magic. Alright, everyone's just piling their cavalry in. Lu Bu is getting severely damaged by Sun Jian here. He did get his slam off. And even though the cavalries are routing, he's losing massive health. And looks like Wei Yan might be able to... No, he's getting kind of clogged together. Lu Bu is kind of just moving right here. Huangfuzong's getting chunked as well. It almost looks like Valiant Vanguard is just busy fighting units while Densetsu 7's trying to kill generals. Lu Zhi is about to go down. Yes, he's out. So it's just a pile up here around the generals. And I don't know what Wei Yan's doing with this command. He's just trying to cycle charge? Why cycle charge when you're ready next to general? You should just try to kill him. Alright, Huang Fusong's routed as well, so Zheng Jiang's still fighting with half health. Muzhi bounces back. Sun Jian died in the mess. There's 2 cavalry there that just forgotten. And I don't know if this is the right choice. We're leaving Lu Bu to just slam around. And Lu Zhi is going to get picked off here as well. Lu Bu's down. The spearman's got to him. Oh, don't. Yeah, hesitation is the enemy. If you're going to do something, do it. Halfway, come back. And then you allow him to come back. If he had just stayed on top of it, escorted him off the field, it would have been just fine. The unbreakable unit would have held until then. But the question comes back to, with Sun Jian dead, who's gonna kill Imperial Sword Guards? I think our earlier statement is gonna come true, actually. That was my main concern. Oh, dismount. Okay, against the... I mean, Zheng Jiang's not gonna do much here. They're getting over pursuit, because they pretty much selected a unit that's routing off and they're getting pulled out of combat. Finally, the cavalry joins, but all there's left to fight are some spear units. Maybe if they loop around and fight the cavalry over here or help hunt down generals like Huang Fusong, who's coming back. If they can chase Huang Fusong instead of just charge into Imperial. Ooh, Poison Dagger. Not going to do too much against units. Well, Huang Fusong dove in as well instead of trying to do a hail of arrow attack here. But let's look at Imperial Sword Guard. Are they really scared of some mercenary cavalry? We're looking at a unit with 86% evasion, 73% armor. Huang Fusong actually gets routed just fighting this cavalry unit here. The chase down should be good. The cavalry should do the chasing. Wei Yan's job is to kill Zheng Jiang now. Because Wei Yan's problem is, he's not unbreakable. The second these units die, he's just going to army loss. I don't think he's bouncing back this time. Alright, now he's trying to kill Zheng Jiang. Zheng Jiang's actually dismounted. In this fight, not sure who will win here. Getting distracted. Have the cavalry charge Zheng Jiang. Good choice, good choice. Army loss kicked in. So all the generals have routed away. And for once in romance mode, the quality unit carries the day. Yeah, there's nothing that can kill these guys. If you just look at Defender Empire, look at the damage. It's just the Spear Guard. You have slightly more armor than regular Spear Guard, but that's about it. And I think that was just the surrender, because there's a few units left, there's nothing to see here. Well, this was an interesting battle. We pretty much have a pile-up, which I guess is how this one is ever going to go, because both sides have no range. Melee was the only solution. When the generals first came, I mean, they were trading damages. Lu Bu was getting lower health, and Sun Jian was losing health on the other side, so they were basically targeting different generals. I think Valiant Vanguard's target choice of Sun Jian is very smart, mainly because he's the only one who could clear his units. And if Sun Jian dies, no one really has a comparable ability that could do anything to these Imperial Sword Guards who just cleaned up afterwards. Look at all these dead yellow bodies on the ground. And that's pretty much the match. I think there were a few mistakes. Wei Yan spent way too much time trying to cycle charge generals in the midst of battle. If you're ready next to them, either stay or even better, dismount. especially since the enemy generals were already dismounted. In this case, since you had worse units, the cavalry probably didn't need to be in the power-up at all. You could just use your unbreakable unit to just kind of stall and try to kill the enemy general with your generals. And if that's successful, you peel Sun Jian out and you slowly cycle in to do Flame of the Phoenix per cooldown. Basically, you come in, clear a circle, charge out, and kite away with your cavalry. But the other problem is the cavalry choices were also not in Densetsu's favor, as his cavalry were weaker quality compared to the flying riders and the Sirian Cav that was picked by Valiant Vanguard. But essentially, we just had this huge pile-up and actually had a match where all the generals were gone and the units carried the day here. Let's see the damages. And taking a look at things, as you can see, there were basically no value from these. They went in to charge the generals, which is why they got no kills. That's okay. I wouldn't say this was a bad charge, because this initial charge chunked Lu Bu quite heavily, and also chunked Huang Fusong quite heavily. The main problem is if you're going with lower tier cavalry, their job should be to chase down units like Huang Fusong who was routing, instead of having your general killer chase the guy who's already routing. So keeping them on the outskirts, or keeping one or two, or even the other one that weren't committed, and having them available to keep generals routed and removing them from the field is much more effective than wasting your general's time. Aside from that, I think looking at the damages is pretty clear which unit carried the day and which unit might be good at stalling but pretty terrible at killing, especially against other premium infantry. Now, these are not premium infantry. These have the same attack. They're all spear guards weapon. They carry the same exact spear, which means these also are not so good either. They just had a lot of help on their side, and also they were kept on the right flank of the battle, so they were only fighting like a couple of these. I think they fought this guy, and it's the only reason why he had a lot of kills, because he was fighting these. And that's pretty much what we ended up with. Cavalry difference, quality. I think it's just a story of quality versus quantity, and if you're facing against some excellent high quality infantry, you need to preserve your general that could kill them, in this case Sun Jian. And the initial trade of recognizing what your generals can do, general killer, holding the enemy with no abilities, trying to rout a few units so you get turning the tide to give a boost of damage to your otherwise low damage unit, and then enemy infantry killer, and play around with that. But once the pop-up happened, not much strategy goes on. You just have to focus targets and get kills, because letting Lu Bu live for any bit of time so that he can do more Dragon's Gaze and Lu Bu's Rage means a lot more damage to your army. And that's pretty much the match, as we have to congratulate Valiant Vanguard moving on with a very fast time of 7 minutes 36 seconds, which means he will get side selection in round 2. So we'll see you guys for that next week. Until then, bye!